Hey y'all, welcome to CrossPolitic. It's good to be with you this evening. Pastor Toby Chuck Knox, I'm the water boy. Why is conservatism going gay?
We're going to find out.
And if there was something you wanted to say to a woman, what would it be?
I don't know, but I think there's a book that's written about it.
I say it to my woman every night.
I love you, girl. What's up now?
What's up now? Best thing since sliced bread, girl. Do your thing, girl. Yeah, I say it every night.
Hey, first, we need to stop. We need to stop that. Stop. Sharon, come get your man. Let's stop and take a moment to talk about the Fight Laugh Feast Club membership. By joining the Fight Laugh Feast Army, not only will you be aiding in our fight to take down secular and legacy media, but you'll also get access to the content placed in our club portal, such as past shows, all our conference talks, and exclusive content for club members that you won't be able to find anywhere else. Nope. Lastly, you also get discounts at all our conferences, $100 off, in fact. So you got a few extra bunts lying around.
It's baseball season.
Kick them over our way. Sign up at flfnetwork.com. All right.
I'm so excited.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah,
hey, we're really grateful to have with us Ms. Denise McAllister. Denise is a journalist and cultural commentator who has written for several publications, including The Federalist and PJ Media, and is co-author of the New York Times bestseller, Spygate, the attempted sabotage of Donald J. Trump. I read this just a minute ago to Gabe, and then a minute later he was like, hey, guys, did you know that she wrote Spygate?
Yeah.
The attempted sabotage of Donald J. Trump?
See, the thing is, Toby was talking to my deaf ear. And
I'm glad we have this pre-show meeting. Denise has also appeared as a commentator on Fox News, BBC, NPR, and CrossPolitic.
Hey!
That actually says the Sean Hannity radio show, and numerous other radio programs across the United States. She is also a Christian apologist who studied systematic theology, apologetics, philosophy, and Christian history at Reformed Theological Seminary.
RTS.
So you guys better watch out. Denise, thanks for coming on CrossPolitic.
Thank you for having me. It's a delight to be here.
So, Denise, how did conservatism get to the point where Dave Rubin is now the face of the movement?
Well, because our culture has redefined love. I really think it's as simple as that. When you redefine love and people, what do you want to be, in society? Do you want to be seen as the person who's hateful, who's mean, who's nasty, who doesn't love anyone? That is the essence of identity politics and white guilt, straight guilt, man guilt, whatever kind of guilt you want to lay on people. It's all rooted in you're not a loving, nice, kind, just human being. And so you're silenced. And you're shut down, you're delegitimized, you're canceled, you're fired, whatever it is, because you're not seen as the good person along the lines of whatever society has deemed to be good. And with the gay agenda, it's all about redefining what love is. And so we as conservatives, we're like, well, our definition of love comes from the created order designed by God. God is love. God defines love. He reveals what love is in his son, in his word. And when our culture says, no, it's not God who defines love. It's we, whatever I feel, whatever the individual is, love is love. That's the message we hear all the time. And so I think conservatives, because they're terrified of being silenced and canceled and seen as the mean, bad, unloving, hateful guy, they've like, oh no, we're on board. We're on board with the LGBT plus train because we're really good people. Don't you know we're really good people? So it's straight guilt. I really think is
straight guilt.
Denise, but help me. I mean, again, I bring up Dave Rubin because Jordan Peterson just interviewed him on the Daily Wire.
Gay parenting,
and I'm thinking, but I mean, I thought the Daily Wire would be, of all places, I've seen so many videos where, Ben Shapiro owns the libs, where whatever, they're standing up and they say, you call me hateful, you call me a bigot, whatever, but I'm not really, I'm standing on the truth. I'm standing on natural law, whatever. And then they do that. And I'm like, but how did they get there? I understand how, I don't know. I guess I understand how Hannity interviews Bruce Jenner.
Kind of a soft version of conservatism.
And acts, like Fox is sort of like, I mean, they've always been kind of, soft and vague. But I guess I thought Daily Wire had more of a backbone. How do they get there?
Well, I used to write for Daily Wire, and I was canceled by Ben Shapiro because I offended a gay man who had attacked my family.
Oh,
that happened 3 years ago. So no, Daily Wire does not have a backbone when it comes to these issues. They are more libertarian than they are conservative. Ben Shapiro definitely opposes same-sex marriage. I think if you caught him in a dark room in a back alley and he were forced out of him, he would say, yes, I agree with Leviticus that homosexuality is an abomination and a sin, but he will not come out strongly against the LGBT agenda that is trying to, has succeeded in establishing homosexuality as an identity, as a human identity. And you got to remember, once you've decided that homosexuality is an identity, rights must go with that. That's why the LGBT agenda is all about identity. It's not about love. It's not about what we do in our bedrooms. It's about identity. So Ben has bought into that because a lot of these conservative outlets, a lot of where their money comes from, a lot of what they rely on to protect their brand. And when Ben Shapiro wrote me and said, you need to disassociate from Daily Wire, we're canceling you, basically. You have got to leave because you've offended this gay man by calling out his sexuality online. He said the reason is, and he told me this, is because I have got to protect my brand. That is exactly what he said. And he said it several times. And I was like, Ben, do you know what's going on here? And what the fight is? And he's like, it doesn't matter. I've got to protect my brand. So this is what these conservatives are. You talk about conservative media. They're all about protecting their brand. Politicians are all about protecting their campaign, their office. So they're going to cave in areas where money's involved. There's a lot of money in conservative gay world, a lot of money. Really? A lot of investors come from homosexual conservatives or libertarians. So they don't want to offend these people. And they also they can go against the trans, they can go against Black people, and they can go against CRT, critical race theory, because there's not money tied up in that. There's not hanging out with them at the cocktail parties. They're hanging out with the friend homosexuals, but they're not hanging out with the people who embrace critical race theory. So, these are the webs that are very threads and webs that tie it all together. And it's a real thing. It's money, it's power, it's prestige, it's status, it's who your friends are, and it's wanting to protect your brand.
Well, I've got a boatload of, like, a dump trunk of questions right now. Denise, you got to help me understand why a homosexual would want to be connected to the conservative movement when traditionally it has completely rejected she's got the face like, you ain't ready for this truth.
She's like, boy, you don't want this answer.
You ain't ready for this truth. Go ahead, Denise. I'm just curious.
Well, it's interesting. Back in the late 80s, there was a book written called After the Ball. And it was an entire manifesto about how to normalize and streamline and get and legitimize homosexuality. The goal there was always to be normalized. And again, to be accepted as an identity so that they have the rights and everything's tied up in having, this is who I am. It's about being, it's about identity. So it was not enough. And in that book, it made it clear it's not enough to simply oppose conservatism or Christianity, because that's going to be a fight that you're always going to have. And you can't go out like in your pride and strip down and be gross and talk about what you actually do in the bedrooms. The book itself said, normalize, normalize, normalize. You're actually just as normal and vanilla as the straight couple down the street. Right. You're just as good of a parents as the heterosexual couple down the street. You're just as good of a Christian as the Christian sitting in the pew next to you who's heterosexual. So, this is the normalization that must happen to be accepted. And so what's happened is not an opposition to conservatism and Christianity, but a subversion of it. So that's why you see people like Pete Buttigieg, who's like, I'm the Christian. I know how to interpret the scriptures. These are bad Christians. Christians who do not embrace homosexuality are bad Christians. We're the good Christians. So they're undermining it. They're kind of like Satan in the garden with Eve. Satan didn't say, God's the bad guy. He said, did God really say that?
Right. Right.
You can really choose who you want to be, Eve. God loves you. Did God really mean that you die? God doesn't really mean that. So he subverted the religion rather than taking a full-on assault, because that just didn't work. They tried that in the 60s and 70s. It didn't work.
So I was my whole read on the Daily Wire is that it's an unsustainable worldview, because what their company worldview is based off secularism. You have the Jewish religion there. You have the Catholic religion there with Matt Walsh. You have the evangelical religion there with Jeremy Boring. But what they all agree to is that there's this neutral operating grounds that they can operate their company off of, and those different theological worldviews don't come into conflict. So that was my view. But you're telling me basically that the Daily Wire is going gay over more money than actually even that secularistic business worldview.
I think the business worldview and the secular worldview that compromises all of those individual views that you just named of those people is about money. So it is about protecting the brand. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make money. There's nothing wrong with protecting your brand.
We want some.
What are you doing? What is your brand based on? And what are you sacrificing in the long run in order to protect it? Are you going to stand on principles in the culture war that will silence and cancel you? Ben Shapiro can speak out against transgenderism because he's really not going to get canceled over that. He's not going to get canceled over his offense to Black people. They just don't have the power that gay people have. It's interesting in intersectionality. You have these hierarchy of marginalized people,
right?
Who are fighting over who's the most marginalized, and whoever is the most marginalized will have the most power. Well, now today it's not Black men. They have no power. They're not up there. You're pretty much silenced. It's Black women are higher than you, but gay men, are probably up there with Black women, probably a little higher. Maybe gay Black women are even higher on the marginalized and have even more power. So all I know is that in the culture today, because of Hollywood, and I really give a lot of bad credit to our entertainment industry, in which Americans are completely googly-eyed and they're so brainwashed by watching Netflix and all the rest of it, that they have been nudged and pushed and massaged and soaked in this perversion and sexual immorality, that they've embraced it. And so the marginalized group and the people who have more power are the gay people and not all these other marginalized groups.
Okay, so if this is happening inside of conservatism, which is shocking it really is shocking to me. I thought that there was a more virtuous conservatism than there was. I was wrong about that. You're laughing. But also, so I have to think, okay, if this is opening the door, homosexuality is becoming normalized inside of the conservative worldview, does it mean that the pro-life movement probably is on its way out to? What else is coming next after this? Are we going to be a pro-choice option soon here, or is that going to be pushed aside too?
Well, it's all about, it comes in waves and it ebb and flows about where power is and what will get you canceled and silenced and marginalized, and who has what's called moral authority within the culture. So in the future, will there be a rise of pro-choice that's able to move the culture away from the pro-life that has gained a lot of ground recently, back to guilting them? Because remember, back in the 90s, conservatives were ashamed to even go to conferences with people who were pro-life. They really distanced themselves from the religious right. Wow. Remember, this is, the Ralph Reed crowd, and the real pro-life crowd is like, hey, we're all good as long as we don't talk about abortion, because abortion makes us look like mean, nasty people. And we want women to come into our party. So let's not talk about abortion so much. Well, over time, because of a lot of different factors and good, strong opposition and pro-life, we overcame that stigma.
This is where Dave and I plan this year's company holidays.
Let's go through the list.
Easter.
Too religious.
St. Patrick's Day.
Too white. Mother's Day.
Way too cisgendered.
All of your usual holidays have been canceled this year.
But we still have Karl Marx's birthday!
Need a real reason to party? Find a new job at redballoon.work.
The season of Augustine and the season of Cassiodorus were very different moments in a crucial transformation that occurred in the history of the Western liberal arts. All right, so just stay like this. How am I doing here? So, yeah, you don't like this, huh? What does a Christian education look like when non-Christians are the ones who control the institutions of learning? This is a question that confronted Bishop Augustine of Hippo in North Africa in the 5th century AD. Augustine lived at the twilight of the Roman Empire. He himself had been trained with the best learning that Rome at that time had to offer. He himself actually came through the ranks and taught rhetoric in some of the best schools. And it was then, after he had come of age, that he converted to Christianity, but he wanted to continue the project of education, but this time for Christians. And so he had to confront the question, what does a Christian education look like when the unbelievers control the field? When they control the institutions, when the whole apparatus and curriculum of learning emerge from a pagan environment. And so Augustine wondered, what is it that Christians should jettison? What is it that Christians can embrace? What is it that Christians can adopt but in modified form? These are the questions that Augustine confronted when he sought to educate Christians in an environment when unbelievers dominated the field. A century later, we see a man in the south of Italy named Cassiodorus who faced a very different educational landscape. He had to ask, what did a Christian education look like in an environment where unbelievers had abandoned the project of education altogether? The infrastructure of learning had entirely eroded. If education was to proceed at all, it had to proceed on the foundation of Christianity. The Christians had to be the ones preserving education. What does a Christian education look like when Christians are the ones forming the institutions, when Christians are the ones organizing the curriculum? Well, these two seasons in the history of education, the season of Augustine and the season of Cassiodorus, just 100 years apart, were very different moments in a crucial transformation that occurred in the history of the Western liberal arts. We're going to be studying this story. We're going to be going back to the sources. We're going to go back to Augustine. We're going to go back to Cassiodorus. We're going to ask ourselves which of their predicaments most resembles our own. Which can we learn from Augustine's period? What can we learn from Cassiodorus's period? As we confront these questions, we're going to engage these sources, and we invite you to join us here at New St. Andrews College.